Hello, everybody. Welcome to Recovery in Action. It's so good to have you join us today. I'm Amy Hicks. I'm filling in for Sharon Cranfield. She's out of town. And today we have such a special person as our guest, Justin Phillips. She's a founder and director of Overdose Hotline. Welcome, Justin.
Thank you, Amy.
Can you tell us the reason why you're involved in everything that you do?
Sure. So I am the founder and executive director of Overdose Lifeline, and when we started Overdose Lifeline in 2014, I had experienced the loss of my 20-year-old son, Aaron, to a heroin overdose. So my career had been spent doing injury prevention, child passenger safety, fire and burn, and so I was in the arena of preventing unintentional deaths, and then I had this life experience. So it was a natural occurrence for me to see we needed to start doing something about opioids. It was almost really the beginning of us paying attention, not the beginning, but of us paying attention in Indiana. So I started Overdose Lifeline to fill the gaps, honestly.
Okay. You're involved in training for the Narcan. Can you tell us about that and how do people get involved in the educational side of using that?
Sure. So the two things that we found when we started Overdose Lifeline were that there was this drug called Narcan or naloxone, which will reverse the overdose. So when Aaron went to treatment, I didn't know about naloxone. And so I knew that lots of people didn't know, that we could save someone's life. And the law had just changed, allowing first responders to have naloxone. So we started raising money for first responders. And then we passed Aaron's Law, which is named after my son, and it allows for you and I to have naloxone without a prescription. So to remove the barriers to access to saving someone's life and really being able to change the shame and stigma around that. So then we got some funding from the former Attorney General to do statewide distribution of naloxone and training. So we do that through Overdose Lifeline, and now you can go into almost every pharmacy in the state and get naloxone over the counter through the pharmacist. They will train you. They're required by law to train you. You can come to Overdose Lifeline if you feel that you don't want to go to the pharmacy or you have a financial burden. We do offer training for large groups and communities, as well as some naloxone distribution for free or for donations.
So can you familiarize me with that a little bit? Is that for heroin overdose?
Correct.
I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah,
so.
no, sorry.
And is that a shot? Or?
Nope. So naloxone, Narcan, only works on opioids. So anything that would be an opioid, so prescription pain medication as well as heroin. And it is administered in 3 different ways. Intramuscular, which means you have an actual syringe needle. Intranasally, which means it's administered into your nose, and then also they do in the hospital intravenously.
What's the most common of all those?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if you're in the hospital, intravenous, or if you're maybe in the field with a paramedic, but intranasal is probably what you're going to see if you're a family going to the pharmacy to purchase it. And then intramuscular is the least expensive way, but it's a little intimidating because you have to use a needle.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. And tell us about the youth prevention program.
Sure. So when we started Overdose Lifeline, as I mentioned, really, for me as a person in public health and injury prevention, we recognized there were gaps. And one of the gaps that we recognized was that we didn't really understand anything about opioids. As a mom, I had given Aaron codeine cough medicine as a toddler, which actually was an opioid, So we get legitimate prescriptions for legitimate injuries, and we shouldn't stop that, but we should be aware that opioids are a very addictive drug, and you can overdose. So we realized that prevention programs for kids in schools were not discussing opioids in that broad sense. Even the general public didn't really know, right? I didn't know that hydrocodone and heroin were the same drug. So we wanted to raise awareness to that, right? We didn't know, right? So we wanted to do a program for kids. And we did focus groups with kids that were in recovery, had been, heroin users. And we worked with subject matter experts, and we found that we needed to have youth telling youth. So we developed a prevention program. It's what's considered a universal program, meaning you only go once. So on the level of most effective ways to prevent, it's not the highest level, but it's a start of opening the door. And our whole intention was to help kids understand this is not a drug you can experiment with. This is a dangerous drug, because we know kids are out there experimenting. And I don't know that we'll ever have a day we can stop every single young person from experimenting, but we definitely want them to understand the dangers, right? So we worked with young people who had their own story to tell, either because of their personal experience or because of a family member. And we built our program for the classroom around this 12-minute video with these young people. And then we have curriculum built on either side, and we have funding from the state to come into schools and do this program for free, because we don't want the burden on the schools. We want the kids to get the message. That's what's most important to us. So we've been able to be in front of about 24,000 kids in Indiana.
Wow.
Yep. And we're really encouraged by just being able to hopefully save one life. We've had a lot of really great outcomes here and there, anecdotal stories of kids coming forth and sharing that they needed some help. So we really feel good about it.
And I know the video, when I first came to the House of Ruth, we watched it several times. So it's not just for kids. I mean, it's definitely educating adults.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And testimonies are just invaluable to adults hearing those, much less the kids. I think they sink in a little bit more with adults, thinking, wow, this is real, that kind
Absolutely.
of thing.
Yeah, I mean, the message in the film is these kids with this real experience. I think it can affect all ages. It definitely affect maybe parents who themselves are suffering from substance use disorder, and recognizing what's happening with their children and seeing that different perspective, as well as parents who don't understand substance use disorder, right?
Yes.
And then watching the film and hearing from these kids. So there's a lot of ways I believe the film has good impact. Mm-hmm.
Right. I think a lot of people, that'll never happen with my family, or things like that. And then they see that, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, and then they can relate. Well, it's not just me. Mm-hmm. It's not just those people. It's all of us.
It's all of us, right?
It affects almost every family is affected by that. Mm-hmm. So, okay, well, we're going to go and show the video now so everybody can see that.
People think it's all a joke until you're in this kind of situation, which I wake up every day with serious written all over me.
I'm just now getting at that age where, I have friends that are doing drugs, and because of what happened to my brother, I just know the consequences aren't worth it.
If you are with a negative and you are not strong enough in your own self, you will be brought down with them. And you won't even know it, and you'll defend yourself, you'll justify yourself. Oh, nothing's wrong with me, I'm not changing. But you do, and when that happens, your mentality changes.
I'm just a normal guy. I just work, go to school, and just be dedicated.
When I got to high school, all my friendships just kind of fell apart, and they were all totally different than I've been used to my whole life.
I've dealt with drugs all my life. Both my parents are addicts, so for me it was like, it was just the lifestyle.
I have an older brother who struggled with heroin use. I worry about going home one day and just finding my mom dead.
It's all a bunch of messed up stuff. I've been shot, stabbed, all kinds.
My dad got addicted to pills, and that has been the story ever since.
It wasn't until he overdosed that I actually even realized that my dad had alcohol problems, drug problems for my whole life.
There's a lot of hurt, pain, regret, stuff that overwhelms people.
At first, it's a really easy choice. You can say yes or no.
Well, I started like eating nerve pills and stuff like after my parents divorced and stuff.
I was experimenting with drugs because of my temporary problems, which I really don't find temporary. You know, it really messed my head up.
Why did I start smoking? Oh, man, it's just one of those times when your friends just like, you know, it's like, it was peer pressure, man. It's just like, man, you here, might as well, we about to teach you, whatever.
It seems like really rational, like when you do it. Like you're like the exception to like becoming addicted. Like you're like, oh, I'm just gonna take this, you know, and it'll be fine and I'm not gonna become addicted. But that's, you know, what if everyone thinks that before they take this?
Like, not just to get a higher buzz, just to see. And that's how I got on everything, just curiosity.
I hung around the cool kids, man. That's what I thought. You know, I thought I was one with the big dogs. I was doing what they were doing. I was smoking what they were smoking. I was drinking what they were drinking. Just like on the music videos when I was little.
And just curiosity, just, you know, what it was like, you know, and everybody else was doing it. So, you know, of course, you know.
It's by choice. And yeah, it might be they would just want something stronger, but it's still their choice and they can still say no.
Oh, my grades suck.
I became that C- to C student.
It's hard to concentrate when you're an addict because you just want a fix. That's it.
And I always had a negative attitude about stuff like this, blah, blah, blah.
Whenever he starts hanging out with his friends, it's like he becomes a completely different person. And he doesn't care about me or my brothers.
Your brain will adapt to it. So again, it gets that first dose, you get high, it enjoys it, but it says, okay, now I'm ready for that the second time. But I'm prepared for it. So now maybe to get that same high or have your brain take that break, it needs more again. And it just keeps building on itself.
I guess it really began with him like smoking pot and drinking.
Well, I started, you know, just, you know, like how any other kid, they start smoking pot, and then, you know, it turned into, I started taking nerve pills all the time, and then it was, you know, Adderall, and then I started doing pain pills, and then pain pills wasn't enough, so that's when I started using heroin.
Those things were sort of the starting point for him, and it just progressed from there, you know.
I started getting into pills after marijuana, you know, drinking in school, getting drunk.
There's a view that pills are clean and heroin's dirty, and take it for what you will, pills are just as bad.
What got me hooked on heroin's first line, and I was smoked a joint before and was already really high because it was some chronic, and I was like, I couldn't get any more higher. Snorted a line of heroin and felt amazing, like the best I've ever felt in my life. And nothing could ever replace that first feeling I had, and I kept wanting to get that every day. Just feel invincible, no problems, nothing to think about. Just feel invincible, and it screwed me over.
Your body gets so immune to different things, it's like levels. And once you get so much of marijuana, you're gonna want more and more and more and more to smoke just to get that high you got the first time. Same with cocaine. Started off with little lines of cocaine and turned into huge lines of cocaine, thick lines.
I didn't know that he was using heroin until he overdosed the first time.
I really don't know how to explain it. You want it every day, all day, and you try to get it every day, all day, just to get that one feeling, but you'll never have it, ever.
And there's a point where you're just so high up there that, you know, you just got to do it just to even feel normal for the day. Like you don't get high no more. You're just normal. It's like to have to live a normal life, and it's awful.
Where heroin acts, it's an area that needs to be fed. Once it gets one, it constantly needs to be fed. And when you take it away and it's not getting that anymore and it depends on it, it's gonna cause your body to do anything it can to go get that substance back. So it makes you feel sick, and these people really get sick when they stop using.
Eventually, you don't use it, you're dope sick. You're on the ground crunching up, puking because you don't have it.
Oh, it's awful. I mean, you know, it's like you get like the hot and cold sweats, and then you know, you're puking, you know, just feeling that urge. You get pains like in your legs and your arms and your back, Your head's pounding, you can't sleep, you can't eat. It's terrible. It's like the worst feeling in the world. And like when I look back, now from this, like I think it's like, why did I let myself be like that?
So heroin, it's fancy talk as an opioid. So it's a drug that is meant to slow things down. And what happens in an overdose is people will take it. It will hit all those spots, and it'll hit them very hard, with either a lot or a very potent dose. And in an overdose, it will then, the body will just stop responding. It will stop breathing. So rather than slow it down, it'll stop it altogether.
I knew I was dying. I was slowly killing myself.
I OD'd a couple of times, and that really changed me, knowing that you were on that bed dead and having to come back to life.
He overdosed a second time, and it was a lot worse. And he suffered severe brain damage from it.
And he got arrested, and I remember the feeling of a relief, that I really wasn't bothered by him getting arrested. I was just happy that he wasn't dead.
You want to stay high because you don't want to think of the problems. But you're going to have to deal with the problems, or you're not going to go anywhere. And if you keep getting high, you're going to be in the same situation you were stuck in 6 years ago.
And then you're all alone in the end. All alone, broke, and probably in jail.
Straight kick your door in, take you to jail, pretty much. It's awful. It was the worst experience of my life.
My decision was, I'm gonna get high and not think about it. I'll deal with it later. Which, I'm dealing with it later.
If you looking up to people like that who do drugs and all that type of stuff, if you think that's cool, you gotta be young-minded, because in reality, drugs don't get you far. They gonna get you in a casket or locked up in prison.
I don't understand how not knowing where you're at is cool. Not knowing who you slept with the night before is cool.
You do have a choice, and it's an important choice, again, because you will lose your ability to make your own choices once you start down that road.
I've just seen the horrors of heroin use. And that's just not something I would ever be inclined to try or be around anyone who is doing it.
Drugs have not helped me. I never ever would have thought I would have been an addict.
It's a horrible life to go down, for real. I wish I never did.
You're going to be curious. It's natural to be curious, but there are big consequences here when you explore, and when you start exploring with this stuff. There are some major consequences.
Saying just say no, do that because it works and it will help you out in the long run.
Am I going to try this and get addicted to it? I don't know. Am I going to try this and not get addicted? I don't know. So, really, with trying any drug, it's a risk.
Find things that make you happy. Find good people in your life, and then you won't need something to fill that void in your life, because it's never worth it. It won't ever be worth it.
The outcome is most likely going to be a lot more negative than positive, inevitably.
You don't have to look just like everyone else, and you don't have to do what everyone else is doing.
Stay in something as positive as you can.
If you want to get up and you want to go to school, then you're going to get up and go to school. If you want to get good grades and you want to go to college, you're going to go. You'll find a way. But if you want to sit at home and you want to sleep all day and you want to feel sorry for yourself, then that's what you're going to do. So I guess that I had to change my want to.
There are mistakes where even an entire lifetime is not going to be enough to really fix it.
You don't have to be where you came from. It's all part of what you want and who you want to be.
Stick with school and getting good grades and actually becoming something of yourself. Not doing all this stuff and going down.
Just don't mess with any drugs or anything that could threaten way you live your life.
You have so much potential. You can do anything, you know. You could be anything you want to be, you know, so why lose all that, you know? Why, you know, just throw that all away just for a buzz? It's not worth it at all. At all.
Never met a person that's doing good for themselves on heroin. Never met it.
Wow, that was a powerful video. Testimonies are just unbelievable. I know I've done my testimony at various places, and I have a different testimony, similar testimony, but different depending on who I'm talking to, whether it's younger people, older people, or just people in addiction, trying to help them. If, you know, I always feel like if I can help one person out there, if just one person sees this or hears this, then I'm doing my job. I'm doing help. So is there any shame and stigma that you'd like to speak about?
Yeah, so shame and stigma as it relates to the chronic disease of addiction, right? So it's part of the platform for Overdose Lifeline and something that we want to talk about all the time because we want it to change. Addiction, substance use disorder is really what we should call it, is a chronic brain disease. So it's a chronic disease just like diabetes or heart disease, but we don't treat it that way in society, right? So I realized soon after my son Aaron passed away that the shame around him using heroin and the stigma that society puts on people who use drugs and suffer from addiction interfered with the way I addressed his disease and the way I believe all of us who suffer from the disease get help. So I want to talk about it and I want to change it. I like to use the analogy that if Aaron had come home and been diagnosed with cancer, I would have gone to work and said, my son has cancer. And you all would have brought me a casserole. But we never take casseroles to people whose children suffer from addiction or family members who have suffer from addiction. I shouldn't just say children, of course. Mm-hmm. I couldn't go to work and tell people. I couldn't get that support from my second family, essentially, the way that I would had Aaron been diagnosed with another disease. And I don't believe that I went and sought treatment for him the way I would have had he been suffering from another disease. So the more we say those things out loud, as hard as it is for me to say, you know, I'm Justin, I'm in recovery myself from alcoholism, and my child died from heroin addiction, I know people will judge me. People will judge me as a parent. People will judge me as an employee. But I still need to do it for everyone else because it's a barrier to recovery, honestly. I think it's a barrier for people asking for help. And we are in a really big public health crisis right now in our country. So we need to change it.
I know with my past, I embarrassed and shamed my family, absolutely. And the healing that's taken place since then has been unbelievable. I mean, my one sister just recently, I mean, it took a lot of time and a lot of work on my part. But my one sister just recently, a month ago, hugged me and said she was so proud of me. And she was so happy that I was such an overcomer. And that really meant a lot But in the last year, I really realized a spiritual family that I did not know I had. And it is so huge now. And the support I have from all them from different towns, different places is just unbelievable. Unbelievable, the support I have now through different areas. But is there anything else you'd like to tell us about the Overdose Lifeline?
You know, as we already talked about, we have our naloxone. We have a support group right now only in Indianapolis, but it's for families who've lost somebody that they love to drugs, because again, we realize it's a different experience, and in other circles, we're judged. We, as much as possible, provide support, referrals to families who need help for a loved one. We, of course, are so grateful for places like House of Ruth, who provide a place for people we know following any kind of treatment, that you're better off in a sober living environment than going back into your home environment, because there's so much potential for relapse. And relapse can be dangerous, especially with opioids. People overdose often on an opioid relapse. So we provide referrals and support for families. We would highly recommend, if someone has a family member or a friend that they care about, that they know has opioid use disorder, to please make sure there is naloxone around, because we do want that person to be able to stay alive, because no one can get into recovery if they're not alive, and everyone deserves a second chance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I want to thank Justin Phillips, the director of the Overdose Lifeline, for being our guest today.
Thank you, Amy.
You're welcome.